Well, I got a doozy for you today. Of course, this is a off-grid vlog, so we'll talk about vloggy things first, and then I'll get into what's going on. So, yesterday I showed you the Berkey, and I talked about the Berkey quite a bit, and how the EPA is being sued by Berkey because the EPA is trying to shut down distributors. So today I thought I'd start out in the house again today. It's cold and cloudy. We're having a lot of troubles getting enough electricity this few weeks, but we're managing. So I've kind of showed you around this before. This is a Walmart refrigerator. We don't use it anymore. We thought it went out, but it didn't. We had that as nomads when we got the truck camper built. We put that in the truck camper and ran it off an inverter. It really served us well. And Carolyn got where she could put 30 days of meat in that little bitty freezer. I mean, it's just a tiny little thing. What she would do is she would package everything like this, just as flat as she can get it. This is actually kind of curled up a little bit. And then you could get 30 days, 4 stacks. So we'd only have to go shopping once a month. Now, this is pretty nice. It ran at 100 watts, so it's probably less than 1 amp. You figure it's 120 times, I don't know, 0.8 or something like that. Well, when we thought that went out, I packed Carolyn up in her truck and said, let's go. What had happened is we went shopping, and we came back, and she started loading up the freezer there with food, and it didn't kick on. Now, when we go shopping and we buy all this meat that we got to freeze, it's a quite the chore, because I got to run the generator, because there's just not well, there's probably enough battery. I just don't want to push the batteries that hard, so it's just easier to run the generator. So we try to go to the shopping in the morning time on a sunny day, and then get back, load it up. Well, it wouldn't start, so I'm trying to pay attention to it because I want to start the generator. Do I need to start the generator? You know, whatever. And it wouldn't start. So I said, we got to go get another refrigerator. So we got in the truck and we started heading towards Walmart. And Carolyn says, I don't want a refrigerator. I want a freezer. I wasn't thinking. I was still stressed because the refrigerator broke. And I said, well, how are we going to keep the refrigerated stuff cold? And she said, well, I'm going to put in coolers. And we're going to buy ice? And she said, no, we'll have a freezer. We can make our own ice. And I was like, oh, yeah, of course. That would make sense. So we got this freezer. I've said this in the past, how to figure out your wattages. And you're probably not going to be able to, but we know that the house has 120 volts. And right here it says 1.5 amps. It says right on the tag right there. So all we got to do is do 120 times 1.5. So this complicates my life. The freezer, the refrigerator, it's just very complicated. When you're making your own electric, you have to worry about these things. It would be so much easier not to have this. Now, we could actually live without this. Carolyn and I was talking about it today, because we can our food right here. So if we went shopping, we just can everything. We can hamburger and chicken and turkey and pork. We bought the freezer so we wouldn't have to go to the store quite as often. You know, with the refrigerator, we were getting 30 days, and with this, we probably get 90, 120 days. So really, the only reason we go to the store now with any frequency is for bacon. We buy this box bacon and just happen to have one here. And I think it's $20 a box for 10 pounds. We eat bacon every day. We eat eggs. We're carnivores. And when we go shopping, we might pick up 5 or 10 pounds of hamburger just to have. But really, we haven't went shopping in a long time. We bought a turkey. Well, actually bought 2. And she just now took out that second turkey. She's going to cook it this week. We got the freezer for convenience, but it really does just make my life less convenient, because I'm always worried about this. Running it off solar panels, you got to make sure you got enough electricity to run it. You got to get through the night. Now, this isn't near as stressful as it is for other people who have a freezer on the grid. And I know you're going to sit there and say, well, it's not stressful to have a freezer. Yes, it is. It's a built-in stress in your life. It's something that you have become accustomed to just dealing with. It's just one of those things like breathing. You know, it's something you have to do, and you've gotten to the point where you just don't even think about it anymore. Oh, I got to maintain the freezer. What do you mean? I know what you're getting ready to say. Well, for me, it's a conscious effort. It's a cloudy day. So I have to go down several times a day to make sure that I got enough battery to run the freezer. I'm gonna have to run the generator at some point. So, you know, all that's going through my mind. But for you, you just go to work, you come home, and you pay the utility bill. And I have found such a much more simplistic life, and people think I'm crazy for this. Yes, I have to worry about the batteries, but like I said, I can shut this off. You have to go to work. So I go down there a couple times a day, check the batteries. Whoop-de-doo. You go to work for 8 hours a day. I watched a video clip last year, 4 people, 2 female, 2 men, and it was in the old Western times. I think it was from a TV show like Bonanza or something like this, but I don't know. I didn't recognize any of the characters. I got to shut the door on the wood stove before I forget. And they are in New York City, I would imagine. And they're on the sidewalk, and some guy's selling appliances, a wash machine, and who knows what else, maybe a refrigerator. And the guy says, so what you got here? And the salesman says, this is supposed to make your life a lot more convenient. You can go out and do things. And he says, well, I'm supposed to do with the extra time. Well, you can go out and go on a picnic. And so the guy says, so you want me to stop working, making my own food, freezing my own food, and doing my own laundry, so I can go get a job to pay for all these things, so I can have more time to go to work, to pay for the electric, and it snowballs. And you get to a point where you don't even realize you're working just to run the freezer. And when you really think about it, seriously, you don't need any of it. We've just gotten so, see, I want to use the word lazy, but it's not the right word. We've gotten so tied in. We are slaves to the freezer that we don't even think about it. We're just going to go to work, got to pay the bills, got to pay the electric. Oh my gosh, the electric bill's so high. Well, then stop using the electric. And it really is that simple. And I don't think a lot of people pay attention to what I'm saying. Stoves, ovens, those kind of things. Carolyn and I lived without a stove for 6 years. We had a Coleman camp stove. When we got the camper, she finally got an oven. But we managed. She cooked on a fire. And think about this. I don't have to work anymore. That's not true. I don't have to work for an employer anymore. I'm not a slave to the freezer. I'm not a slave to the refrigerator. And I just don't think people realize the effort you have to put into your life. And then when I say, hey, live off grid, oh, that's a lot of work. I don't know. I'm old. I can't do it. I'm a senior citizen. Well, you're having to work now. You're having to pay for all these things. So we have 2 coolers. This one here, it just holds a little, like, we put a jar of chicken in here for the cat. I have cottage cheese in here, maybe some butter sometimes, just little things that we might snack on up here. We used to, in the summer, eat all our food in the camper. Well, now, since it's cold, we've been eating up here. She cooks down there, we bring it up here. We keep the little condiments and those kind of things. Now, that's another thing, is a lot of people just overpack the refrigerator. I mean, just overpack it with garbage. And we just don't have that much. Of course, you got to have your beer, you got to have your sodas, and you got to have all that stuff. And being carnivores, off sugar, off carbohydrates, we just don't have to worry about any of that stuff. And life is so much more simple. But people tell me I'm crazy. People tell me that I need to do more, that I'm a cheapskate. Well, I'm going to be honest. I'm probably the laziest one out of all of you. I don't have to do anything. Life just isn't that hard. I go down and start a generator at night before I go to bed on days I gotta go shopping. So then we, of course, have another cooler down here. I'm checking my water here. I put this tub here to collect rainwater. Well, I was dumb and I stuck a brick in my ditch here. And so all that water backwashed into my well, so I had to flush out my well. I feel so stupid. Spent all these time digging these ditches so that water would get away from it, and then I just blocked it up with so now I'm checking to make sure everything's clean. And so what I do is I let water sit in here, and then I can take my finger, go in there slowly, and rake it across the bottom to see if you see any white streaks, because that dirt would settle down onto the bottom. but I've got it flushed out now. It's good and clean. This one too. The bucket's a little bit dirtier, so it's hard to see. That one's clean too. So we'll buy frozen chicken. But on the other hand, we'll buy, let's say, eggs, although we have eggs, but occasionally we'll get some eggs. Well, store-bought eggs, you got to refrigerate. The chicken eggs that we have, we don't have to refrigerate. If you take your bag of chicken or your turkey, this is frozen. You don't even have to freeze ice. Oh, cheese, there's a good example. Put your cheese in there. So this keeps, in the summertime, will keep it cool while it's thawing out. So you're doing two things at once. You're thawing out your turkey or your chicken while you're keeping your condiments cold. Now in the wintertime, especially this winter, it has been so easy to refrigerate things. I mean, the temperatures haven't gotten below probably 25 degrees at night, and that's not even very consistent. This morning when I woke up, it was 31 degrees. Most people keep their refrigerator set around 35, 36 degrees. Well, during the day, the highs are maybe in the 40s. So your cooler probably doesn't get much hotter than 35 or much colder than 35. But then if it gets too cold, what is really nice about when it gets too cold, let's say it gets down to 5 degrees, we can go shopping then. Go shopping, buy all our meats, get it all packaged up in individual packages, take it outside and let it freeze. Then I can put it in the cooler, and then I don't even have to worry about running the generator to run that freezer. And so we've been waiting to fill the freezer until we got to those kind of temperatures this year, but we just haven't had to deal with it. So we might have to wait until a sunny day if it doesn't get very cold soon, and we'll just have to run that generator. It's not a big deal. What I do is I kind of consider the generator cost. It's going to be about $3 to run the generator as part of the food cost. So you spend $200 on food, which we do, $200 to fill that freezer, $200 to $300, and then an extra $3 to run that generator. And then in the summertime, we'll freeze bottles of water in the freezer. Soda bottles, water bottles, small water bottles, 1 liters, I guess they are, 16 ounces, whatever you call them. And you can freeze a bunch of those in there and then put them in the cooler, and you just swap those out every day. Now, I know what people are saying. This is a lot of work. I have to do a lot of work. Moving coolers around, making sure everything, and yes, you got to pay attention. Spending 10 minutes a day dealing with the coolers seemed like a real inexpensive price compared to going to work for an employer for 16 hours a day. The other thing is you got to keep up your maintenance costs on your freezers and refrigerators. My grandmother had a basement full of freezers. I would say she had 3 freezers. Her electric went out for 2 weeks. Now, she didn't think about generators or anything like that. She would butcher several cows once a year and fill those freezers up. And then she'd have meat for the rest of the year. Well, springtime rolls around, big storm comes through, knocks out the electric for 2 weeks, and she loses all her meat. The other thing is freezers go out. Cost of losing your food, you got the cost of having to replace your freezers every, 10 years. Now, the other thing is people will go out and buy one of those big refrigerators. And I just don't see the point in that. Even when I lived in a regular house, my ex-wife, my daughter, and myself, and we had, 3 dogs, our refrigerator went out. So when we moved into our house, we bought the house, and it came with the stove and a refrigerator, water heater, the appliances were in it. Well, that refrigerator went out. We didn't go out and replace it with a full-size refrigerator. We went out and bought one of those Walmart refrigerators. I do think it was probably about the same size as the one you just saw. And we lived in it. Now, we were raising ducks and chickens at the time. And at the time, I didn't know that you didn't have to refrigerate your chicken eggs or your duck eggs. Refrigerated all those eggs also. And we were able to manage. Another thing is not everything has to be refrigerated. I think a lot of people just throw garbage into their refrigerator. I know I did. You just pack it full of junk. And you lose track of stuff, and every few months you got to clean out the refrigerator. We know exactly what we got, how much we got, and we only buy what we need. This is a minimalistic lifestyle. And I think people really have a hard time understanding what that means. They think it's a lot of work. But it's not. It's less work. And I just can't convince people of this. People are convinced that when you live off grid, it is nothing but sun up to sun down, working 15, 16 hours a day, taking care of the farm animals and all that. Well, we have chickens, so they take about half hour of my time each day, maybe total. Maybe. I don't even think it's that much. The thing that takes the most time out of my life is canning. About once a month, maybe twice a month, I will can about 20 jars of food. And that's an all-day job. Really isn't that hard. So you're suggesting that going to work 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, every day, easier than living off grid, dealing with half hour with the chickens, canning once a month, and checking the coolers to make sure they're staying cool. I disagree. I highly suggest that you take advantage of wintertime. Unplug your refrigerator today. So I hope I can inspire you to learn how to live minimalistically so you can live your dreams. Thanks for watching.